Wildfires by Seymour Simon. A raging wildfire is a frightening thing. Living trees can burn as fast as cardboard boxes in a bonfire. Flames race through the treetops, sometimes faster than a person can run, burning at temperatures hot enough to melt steel. A wildfire can be a major disaster, capable of destroying hundreds of homes and costing human lives. But not all fires are bad. Fires in nature can help as well as harm. A burned forest allows young plants to begin growing, and fire is necessary for some trees, such as sequoias, to release their seeds. Instead of being an ending, fire is often a new chapter in the continuing story of the natural world. A fire is a chemical reaction, and it needs three things to burn: fuel, oxygen, and heat. During a fire, energy is released as heat and light, which is why fires are so hot and bright. When a fire is done, there is often nothing left but ash. Ash is the form the fuel takes after the chemical reaction of fire is over. Not only do fires release heat, but they are also caused by heat. A fire can be caused by a burning match, a flash of lightning, or a glowing ember in a dying campfire. Once a fire starts, the heat from the fire can cause other fires to start in nearby materials. A burning leaf can set fire to a nearby leaf without touching it, just from the intense heat. The flaming leaves can then set fire to a branch, which can set fire to the whole tree. In a short while, a fire can leap to another tree, and then another and another. A whole forest can be set ablaze from a tiny fire no bigger than the flame from a match. Fires also need oxygen to burn. Oxygen is an invisible gas in the air we breathe. One of the reasons wet wood rarely burns is that the water prevents air from getting to the fire. That's why water is used to fight fires in homes and in forests. For many years, Smokey Bear warned that only you could prevent forest fires, making people think that all fires were enemies. But wildfires are a fact of life in the wilderness, and plants and animals have adjusted to them. Many trees are so dependent on fires that they need cycles of fire in order to grow. Other kinds of trees and shrubs grow back quickly after a fire, often healthier than before. Most animals can survive forest fires by running or flying away, or going underground and waiting out the fire as it passes. And plants that grow quickly after a fire provide food for animals that might otherwise starve. In fact, aggressively fighting fires has probably decreased the number of wildfires that help a forest renew itself while increasing the number of more dangerous fires. Scientists say that by stamping out all fires as soon as they start, people have allowed leaves, dead wood, twigs, and bark to accumulate on the forest floor. This provides much more fuel to feed big wildfires than would be the case if small fires were allowed to burn naturally. A director of the United States Forest Service has said that it is not a question of whether these areas will burn, but only a question of when. The summer of 1988 was hot and dry in Yellowstone National Park. Almost no rain fell, less than in any year for the previous 100 years. On June 23rd, a flash of lightning started a fire near Shoshone Lake in the southwest part of the park. In a few weeks, a total of 8 major fires were burning. 6 of these fires were caused by lightning and were allowed to burn. The other 2 fires were caused by human carelessness and were fought from the beginning. Since 1972, Yellowstone Park officials had allowed fires started by lightning to burn themselves out, unless they threatened structures built by people. In the next 16 years, there had been over 200 such natural fires. But as the fires and smoke drove tourists from the park in the summer of 1988, officials changed their minds. In mid-July, they ordered firefighters to attack the Shoshone fire, which was coming close to the park buildings at Grant Village. Finally, the officials abandoned their policy of letting lightning fires burn naturally, and they launched what was at the time the largest firefighting effort in the history of the United States. Hundreds of firefighters were sent to battle the 8 major blazes, but by then, more than 50 smaller ones had started, most from new lightning strikes. The old fires continued to spread, while the small fires raced toward one another and merged into even bigger fires. Spruces, firs, and giant lodgepole pines burst into flames like matchsticks. Boulders and rocks exploded in the heat of the flames. There was more bad news. On August 19th, gale force winds gusted to 60 miles per hour, blowing hot embers a mile downwind and starting new fires. The winds also whipped the flames forward and fed them oxygen. Some of the fires moved through the trees at speeds of up to 5 miles per hour, much faster than most forest fires, and as fast as a person can run. On August 20th, known as Black Saturday, 165,000 acres of forest, an area more than twice the size of the entire city of Chicago, were burning. But the worst was still ahead. By early September, most of the fires in the park were completely out of control. Thick clouds of bitter black smoke covered the Yellowstone Valley. One of the major fires, the North Fork, was racing toward Old Faithful, the famous geyser. The geyser couldn't burn, but the nearby Old Faithful Inn, the world's largest log structure and as flammable as a huge tinderbox, was directly in the fire's path. Weary firefighters tried to wet down the roof and walls of the inn, but it seemed hopeless. The fire was just too strong. Sparks and glowing embers shot over the lodge and set fire to the trees at the other end of the parking lot. It seemed as if the inn would soon be consumed by flames. Suddenly, at the last moment, the winds shifted and the fires turned away from Old Faithful. On Saturday, September 10th, heavy rains began to drench the area around the inn. The next morning, it snowed. While some fires in the park would continue to burn until November, the worst was over. More than 25,000 firefighters had been called in to help. They had used more than 100 fire engines and an equal number of planes and helicopters to drop millions of gallons of water and chemicals to slow the advancing flames. But it was the weather, not human beings, that finally ended that summer of fire. By the time the fires had all died out, about 800,000 acres inside the park had burned, along with another 600,000 acres in the national forests and other lands nearby. About 65 buildings had been destroyed, and 2 people died in the fires. To many people watching on television, it seemed as if the park had been scorched by the flames and would never recover. But that was not so. Nearly 2/3 of the park had not been touched by fire, and even the 1/3 that had burned was starting to recover.